Ambassador Hen Ki stood in the massive halls of the Galactic Council building. The crystal walls reached up to the sky like frozen waterfalls. Thousands of different alien species moved through the corridors. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated in the air or crawled on many arms. The smell of different atmospheres mixed together in the recycled air. His assistant So Min hurried to catch up with him. Her tablet showed urgent messages that kept coming in every few seconds. "Ambassador, the council wants to see you right away," she said. Her voice was tight with worry. "They say it's about the Thakari situation." Hainan Ki nodded but did not slow down. He had been expecting this call for weeks. The Thakari Empire had been at war with 3 different star systems for almost 2 years. Their massive warships destroyed trade routes and attacked peaceful colonies. Every attempt at peace. Talks had failed. The Thakari seemed to enjoy fighting more than talking. The council chamber doors opened with a soft hiss. Inside, representatives from dozens of worlds sat in a great circle. At the center stood Councillor Zilthik, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. His large eyes looked tired. The weight of galactic politics showed on his face. "Ambassador Hainan Ki," Zilthik said in his deep voice, "thank you for coming so quickly. We have received an unexpected message from the Thakari Empire." Hainan Ki took his place at the human section of the circle. Around him, other ambassadors whispered to each other in different languages. The tension in the room was thick enough to touch. "What kind of message?" Hainan Ki asked. Zilthik activated a hologram in the center of the room. A Thakari warrior appeared, tall and covered in dark armor. His face looked like it was carved from stone. Sharp teeth showed when he spoke. This was War Prime Vektash, the leader of the Thakari military forces. "People of the Galactic Council," the recording began. Vektash's voice was rough like grinding metal. "We grow tired of this endless conflict. The Thakari Empire is willing to discuss peace terms." A wave of surprise sounds filled the chamber. Several ambassadors stood up in shock. The Thakari had never shown interest in peace before. "However," Vektash continued, "we have conditions. The peace talks will be held on a world of our choosing. If you truly want peace, you will meet us on Kepler 442b. The hologram ended. Silence filled the chamber like a heavy blanket. Every ambassador knew about Kepler 442b. It was famous throughout. The galaxy is one of the most dangerous worlds ever discovered. So Min quickly pulled up data on her tablet. She showed the screen to Hainan Ki. The information made his stomach feel cold. Kepler 442b was classified as a Class 12 death world. The gravity was 3 times stronger than Earth normal. The atmosphere was filled with toxic gases that could kill most species in minutes. The surface temperature changed from freezing cold to burning hot without warning. "This is impossible," said Ambassador Krenth from the Zephyrian Collective. His tentacles waved in agitation. "No delegation has ever survived more than a day on that world? They are asking us to commit suicide. The gravity alone would crush half the species in this room," added Representative Yilmer from the Silicon Brotherhood. Her crystalline body glowed red with anger. "This is not a peace offer, it is an execution." Councillor Zilthik raised one of his 4 hands for quiet. "The Thakari chose this location for a reason. They believe no species can survive there except themselves. It gives them a huge advantage in any negotiation." Hainan Ki studied the planetary data more carefully. The pictures showed a world of jagged mountains and deep valleys. Storms that could level cities swept across the surface every few days. Strange creatures with metal-like skin hunted in packs. Even the plants seemed designed to kill anything that touched them. "What do we know about previous expeditions to this world?" he asked. So Min scrolled through the records. 17 different attempts over the last 50 years. The longest anyone survived was 4 days. That was a Corvan military unit with full environmental suits and heavy weapons. "All died?" Hainan Ki asked. "All died," she confirmed. The chamber erupted in discussions. Some ambassadors demanded they reject the Thakari offer immediately. Others suggested sending robot negotiators instead of living beings. A few thought they should agree to the talks but try to change the location. Hyun-ki stood up slowly. The room gradually became quiet as other ambassadors noticed him. All eyes turned to the human representative. The human delegation accepts the Thakari conditions, he said clearly. The reaction was immediate and loud. Shouts of surprise and anger filled the chamber. Ambassador Krent's tentacles turned pale with shock. Representative Yomer's crystalline body flickered like a broken light. "Are you insane?" Krent shouted. "You are sentencing your entire diplomatic team to death." Councillor Zilthik held up his hands for silence again. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. "Ambassador Hyun-ki, are you certain about this decision?" "We can find other ways to approach the Thakari." Hyun-ki looked around the chamber at all the worried faces. "Councillor Zilthik, how important are these peace talks?" The blue-skinned leader's expression became very serious. "The Thakari control 3 major trade routes through the spiral arm. Their continued aggression threatens the economic stability of 47 different worlds. If this war continues, millions more will die. And if we refuse their conditions, then the war continues indefinitely. The Thakari will see our refusal as proof that we are weak. They will become even more aggressive." Hyun-ki nodded. "Then we have no choice. Someone has to try." So-min grabbed his arm. "Ambassador, the survival rate is 0%. 0. No one has ever come back from that world alive." "That's not exactly true," Hyun-ki said quietly. He pointed to a small note in the planetary data. "It says here that the Thakari have visited KEPLER 442b multiple times. They obviously have ways to survive there." "They're a warrior species," So-min protested. "Their biology is completely different from ours. They're stronger, faster, and more resistant to environmental dangers." "Maybe," Hyun-ki said. "But humans have something that might be more important than strength." "What's that?" "We adapt." The chamber was still buzzing with worried conversations. Hyun-ki could see the fear in many faces. The other ambassadors thought he was leading his team to certain death. "Counselor." Zilthik stepped closer to the human section. "Ambassador, I must ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this decision? Once we send the acceptance message to the Thakari, there will be no backing out." Hyun-ki looked at So-min. She was scared, but she nodded slowly. She trusted his judgment even when she didn't understand it. "Send the message, Counselor," Hyun-ki said. "Tell War Prime Vektash that the human delegation will meet him on Kepler 442b in 1 week." As the session ended and ambassadors began to leave, many stopped to shake Hyun-ki's hand or offer words of respect. They thought they were saying goodbye to a dead man. Some called him brave. Others called him foolish. Walking back through the crystal corridors, So-min stayed close to his side. "Do you really think we can survive on that world?" she asked quietly. Hyun-ki watched the different alien species moving around them. Each had evolved on their own world with their own advantages. Some were stronger than humans. Some were smarter. Some could survive in environments that would kill a human instantly. "I don't know if we can survive," he admitted. "But I know one thing about humans that the Thakari don't understand yet." "What's that?" "We're really, really good at surviving in places where we're not supposed to be able to live." As they reached the human embassy section, Hyun-ki began making his plans. They had 1 week to prepare for the most dangerous diplomatic mission in galactic history. The Thakari expected them to die on Kepler 442b. Maybe they were right, but maybe they were about to learn something new about what humans could do when everything depended on it. The human diplomatic ship Harmony cut through space toward Kepler 442b. Ambassador Hyun-ki stood on the bridge watching the planet grow larger on the main screen. It looked like a sick green and brown marble covered in swirling clouds. Lightning flashed constantly in the atmosphere like angry spirits. "That doesn't look very welcoming," said Taeho from the pilot's seat. He was the security chief for the diplomatic mission. His hands moved carefully over the ship controls as they got closer to the planet. "The storm systems are much worse than the reports showed." So-min checked her readings at the science station. Atmospheric pressure is 12 times Earth normal. Wind speeds at the surface are reaching 300 kilometers per hour. The chemical composition shows high levels of sulfur compounds and acid vapor. In simple words, the air will kill us and the weather will destroy our ship, said Jiwoo from the communications post. She was young for such an important mission, but her skills with languages and technology were the best in the diplomatic corps. Hyeon-ki nodded calmly. What about our equipment modifications? Taeho turned his chair around to face the ambassador. I've reinforced the environmental suits with extra power cells. They should keep us alive for up to 72 hours. In that atmosphere, the gravity compensators will help with the heavy gravity, but we'll still feel like we're carrying another person on our backs. And the ship? Hull plating has been upgraded with acid-resistant coating. Engines have extra shielding. We should be able to land and take off again, assuming nothing major breaks. Jiwoo looked up from her console. Ambassador, I'm receiving a transmission from the Thakari vessel. They're requesting our landing coordinates. Put them on screen, Hyeon-ki. Ordered. The main display changed to show the inside of a Thakari ship. War Prime Vektash appeared, his dark armor making him look like a metal statue. Behind him, other Thakari warriors moved around their bridge. They were all much larger than humans, with thick muscles and sharp claws. Human ambassador, Vektash said in his grinding voice. We are surprised you actually came. Most species would have found excuses to avoid this meeting. The human delegation keeps its promises, War Prime, Hyeon-ki replied politely. We are ready to begin our descent to the surface whenever you are. Vektash's mouth showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. Very well. We will land at coordinates 45.7 north, 127.3 west. It is a flat area between two mountain ranges. Try not to crash your fragile ship. The transmission ended. Taeho immediately began plotting their descent path. Those coordinates are right in the middle of a storm system, he said. The Thakari chose the most dangerous landing zone possible. Of course they did, So-min said quietly. They want us dead before the negotiations even begin. Hyeon-ki watched the planet filling their view screen. The storms looked like hurricanes made of acid and lightning. Can we make it down safely? I can get us down, Taeho said with confidence. Getting back up might be harder. The ship shook as they entered the upper atmosphere. Warning lights began flashing all over the bridge. The hull temperature readings climbed rapidly as acid rain began hitting their shields. Hull integrity holding at 97%, Owu reported. But the acid is eating through the outer coating faster than expected. Through the view screen they could see the Thakari ship descending ahead of them. It was much larger than the human vessel, built like a flying fortress. But even the massive Thakari ship was being thrown around by the violent winds. Their ship is having problems too, Taeho observed. Look at their hull plating. It's already showing stress fractures. Hyeon-ki leaned forward in his chair. The Thakari had chosen this world because they thought they could handle it better than other species. But it was clear that even they found KEPLER 442b dangerous. The ship dropped through layer after layer of toxic clouds. Each level brought new challenges. Acid storms that could melt metal, electrical discharges that made their instruments go crazy, pressure changes that threatened to crush their hull. Approaching the surface, Taeho announced. I can see the landing zone through a break in the clouds. The landscape below looked like something from a nightmare. Sharp crystal formations stuck up from the ground like giant knives. Geysers of superheated gas shot hundreds of meters into the air. Strange. Plants with metallic leaves moved like they were alive. Those aren't plants, So-min said, studying her scanner readings. They're some kind of silicon-based life form. And they're carnivorous. The Thakari ship touched down first, its heavy bulk settling onto a flat area of crystalline rock. Steam rose from around its landing struts as the superheated surface began melting the metal. Taeho brought the Harmony down more carefully, using the ship's repulsors to hover just above the ground. I don't want to land directly on that crystal surface. It might cut through our hull. He found a spot about 50 meters from the Thakari ship where the ground was smoother. Even so, the ship rocked back and forth as the violent winds tried to push it over. Atmospheric readings are exactly as bad as we expected, Wu reported. Temperature is 47 degrees Celsius. Humidity is at 98% with high acid content. Gravity is 2.8 times Earth normal. Hyan-Ki stood up slowly, feeling the extra weight already. Moving felt like swimming through thick liquid. Time to suit up. Remember, we represent not just humanity, but all the peaceful species in the galaxy. The team moved to the airlock where their environmental suits waited. The suits were bulky and covered with sensors and life support equipment. Each one cost more than a small starship. Suit diagnostics are all green, Taeho reported as he helped So-Min with her helmet connections. But remember, 72 hours maximum life support. After that, we're breathing poison. The negotiations shouldn't take that long, Hyan-Ki said. Though he didn't sound completely sure, Yu activated the airlock controls. I'm reading movement outside. The Thakari are already suiting up. Through the small airlock window, they could see Thakari warriors emerging from their ship. Even in their environmental armor, the aliens moved awkwardly in the heavy gravity. Their usual graceful strength was replaced by slow, careful steps. They're struggling too, So-Min observed. Maybe this world is harder for them than they expected. The airlock finished cycling. Han-Ki took a deep breath of recycled air and stepped outside onto the surface of Kepler-442b. The gravity hit him like a physical blow. Each step required 3 times the normal effort. The ground beneath his feet was sharp crystal that would have cut through normal boots. Steam and acid vapor reduced visibility to just a few meters. Stay close together, he ordered through his suit radio. We don't want to get separated in this environment. The Thakari delegation was already moving toward them. War Prime Vektash led the group, but his usual commanding presence was diminished by the awkward way he had to walk. Behind him, 6 other Thakari warriors struggled with the conditions. Humans, Vektash called out when he got close enough. His voice sounded strained even through the suit communicator. You actually survived the landing. Impressive. We're tougher than we look, Hyan-Ki replied. Before Vektash could answer, Jiwoo's voice crackled over the radio. Movement sensors are picking up multiple contacts approaching fast from the north. Something big is coming this way. Through the acid mist, shapes began to appear. They looked like wolves, but their fur was replaced by metallic scales that reflected the strange light. Their eyes glowed with electrical energy. They moved in a coordinated pack, surrounding both delegations. Predators, Taeho said, his hand moving to his weapon. Indigenous species. Probably attracted by our body heat or electrical signatures. The creatures were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Each one was the size of a large dog, with claws that sparked with electrical current. They circled the 2 groups like sharks around swimmers. Do not show fear, Vektash commanded his warriors. Thakari do not run from beasts. But the heavy gravity was making it hard for the Thakari to move quickly. When the creatures attacked, the aliens were too slow to dodge effectively. One warrior went down under 3 of the metallic beasts. Another stumbled and fell as electrical discharge from the creatures. Claws disrupted his suit systems. Hyan-Ki made a decision that would change everything. Taeho, help them, he ordered. Sir, you heard me help the Thakari? Taeho didn't hesitate. He moved faster than should have been possible in the heavy gravity, his human flexibility allowing him to adapt to the conditions better than the rigid Thakari fighting style. His weapon fired precise shots that drove the creatures back without hitting any of the fallen warriors. So Dashmin and Jiwoo moved to help the injured Thakari back to their feet. The creatures, seeing organized resistance, retreated back into the mist as quickly as they had appeared. War Prime Vektash stared at the humans in shock. His people had been saved by the species he had expected to watch die. The implications of this act would echo through everything that followed. Why? He asked. Simply. Hyan-Ki looked at the Thakari leader through his helmet visor. Because that's what people do for each other. 3 days had passed since both delegations landed on Kepler 442b. The formal negotiations had begun in a makeshift shelter between their two ships, but progress was slower than frozen mud. Every few hours, the talks stopped as another environmental crisis demanded their attention. Ambassador Hyanki sat across from War Prime Vektash at a metal table that had been welded together from spare ship parts. Between them lay data tablets showing trade route maps and proposed peace terms. But both leaders kept glancing toward their teams, who were clearly struggling with the planet's hostile conditions. Your offer is unacceptable, Vektash said for the third time that morning. His voice came through his environmental suit speaker, but Hyanki could hear the strain in it. The Thakari Empire requires full control of the Kepler Passage trade route. And as I have explained, War Prime, that trade route serves 17 different colonies, Hyanki replied patiently. We need to find a solution that works for everyone. Through the shelter's transparent walls, Hyanki watched his team working outside. Somin was taking soil samples while Ji Wu checked their communication equipment. Both women moved carefully but steadily in the heavy gravity. Their human flexibility was helping them adapt to the conditions better than expected. The Thakari warriors, on the other hand, looked tired. Their powerful bodies were built for short bursts of intense activity, not the constant strain of fighting. Heavy gravity for days. Several of them had developed problems with their environmental suits. Their proud warrior culture prevented them from asking for help, but their declining performance was obvious to anyone watching. Perhaps we should take another break, Hyanki suggested. Your warriors look like they could use some rest. Vektash's helmet turned sharply toward him. Thakari warriors do not need rest. We are not weak like other species. Of course not, Hyanki agreed diplomatically. I simply thought we might use the time to review some of the technical details. Before Vektash could respond, Somin's voice came through the radio. Ambassador, I need to speak with you privately. It's about the water situation. Hyanki excused himself and walked outside to where Somin was working near a small stream that ran between the crystal formations. The water looked clear, but steam rose from its surface. What did you find? He asked so Dashmin held up her scanner. The local water sources are contaminated with sulfur compounds and heavy metals. Most species would get sick or die from drinking. But I ran some tests. She showed him the readout. Human liver chemistry can actually process most of these toxins without problems. What about the Thakari? That's the issue. These compounds would make them very sick. They've been rationing their water supplies, but they're going to run out soon. Hyanki looked back toward the Thakari ship. He could see warriors moving around slowly, their movements becoming more sluggish as dehydration set in. Their pride was literally killing them. How much purified water do we have left? Enough for our team for another week, maybe 10 days if we're careful. Hyanki made a decision that went against all normal diplomatic protocol. Start sharing our water with the Thakari delegation. Somin stared at him. Ambassador, that will cut our survival time in half. I know. But we can't negotiate with dead aliens. How do we do it without making them lose face? If they think we're offering charity, they might refuse or even see it as an insult. Hyanki thought for a moment. Tell them it's a diplomatic courtesy. Part of human custom during formal negotiations. Make it sound like they're doing us a favor by accepting. Somin nodded and began preparing water containers. An hour later, she approached the Thakari camp carrying purified water and explaining that human diplomatic tradition required hosts to share refreshments during peace talks. Vektash accepted the gesture with dignity, though Hyanki could see the relief in the way the Thakari warriors drank the clean water. The negotiations resumed that afternoon with slightly better progress. Vektash seemed more focused and his warriors looked stronger. But the real breakthrough came at sunset when the ground began to shake. Seismic activity, Ju Wu announced, checking her instruments. Something big is happening underground. The shaking got worse. Equipment fell over and the makeshift shelter began to sway dangerously. In the distance, a mountain peak started glowing red. Volcanic eruption, Somin called out. The seismic activity triggered it. We need to move now. Lava began flowing down the mountainside toward their camp. The molten rock moved slowly but steadily, destroying everything in its path. Both delegations had maybe 30 minutes before the lava reached their position. Hyun-ki abandoned all diplomatic protocol. Everyone work together, he shouted. Taeho, coordinate the evacuation. Somin, find us a safe route. Jiwoo, help the Thakari with their equipment. The next 20 minutes were chaos. Both teams worked together to save what they could and move to higher ground. Han-ki found himself running alongside Vektash, both leaders helping to carry injured team members to safety. Your ship, Vektash called out through his helmet speaker. The lava flow will reach it first? Hyun-ki looked back and saw that the War Prime was right. The human ship Harmony was directly in the path of the molten rock. But changing direction? To save it would mean abandoning some of the heavier Thakari equipment. Leave the ship, Hyun-ki decided. Help your people. Vektash stopped running and stared at him. You would sacrifice your only way off this world to save Thakari equipment? That equipment contains your cultural records, doesn't it? Your history. And traditions are more important than our transportation. For a moment, the Thakari leader said nothing. Then he made his own decision. Krex, Vorthik. Go with the humans. Help them save their ship. War Prime? One of the warriors questioned. Do it, Vektash ordered firmly. Working together, the combined team managed to move both ships just out of the lava's path. It was close. The molten rock passed less than 10 meters from the Harmony's landing struts. Both vessels suffered some damage from the heat, but they remained functional. As the immediate danger passed, both delegations gathered on a ridge overlooking the destruction. Where their negotiation shelter had stood, only cooling black rock remained. The landscape had changed completely in less than an hour. We will need to find another place to continue our talks, Vektash said quietly. Actually, Jiwoo spoke up. I found something while scanning for safe zones. She showed them her geological scanner. There's a cave system about 2 kilometers north. It looks stable and should protect us from the weather. You want us to negotiate underground? One of the Thakari warriors asked. It's better than trying to talk while dodging lava. Taeho pointed out that evening, both teams worked together to set up a new camp near the cave entrance. The shared crisis had broken down some barriers between the species. Humans and Thakari worked side by side, sharing tools and expertise. Around a portable heater that night, something unexpected happened. Jiwoo began playing music from her personal communicator. Soft melodies from Earth. The Thakari listened in fascination to sounds they had never heard before. Your species makes these sounds for pleasure? Asked Krex, the warrior who had helped save the human ship. Music helps us express emotions, Jiwoo explained. This song is about hope during difficult times. Krex nodded slowly. We have something similar. He began a low, rhythmic chanting in the Thakari language. Other warriors joined in, creating a complex harmony that spoke of battles fought and honor earned. Hyun-ki watched War Prime Vektash during this cultural exchange. The Thakari leader's expression was thoughtful behind his helmet visor. For the first time, he seemed to be seeing humans as something other than weak prey. Tomorrow we move to the caves, Vektash announced. These talks will continue until we find a solution both sides can accept. Agreed, Hyun-ki said. But War Prime, I want you to know something. What happened today with your warriors helping to save our ship, that meant a great deal to my people. Vektash was quiet for a long moment. Your people chose to share water with us even though it reduced your own survival chances. Your pilot risked his life to save Thakari warriors from those creatures. Today you were willing to sacrifice your ship to preserve our cultural records, he paused. These are not the actions of a weak species. And your people chose to help us save our ship even when your own equipment was in danger, Hyun-ki replied. That tells me the Thakari understand honor in ways that go beyond warfare. As both teams prepared for sleep, Hyun-ki realized something important had changed. They were no longer two separate groups trying to survive on a hostile world. They were becoming one team. learning to work together against the challenges that Kepler 442b threw at them. The Death World was teaching them lessons about cooperation that no negotiating table ever could. Tomorrow's talks in the caves might actually lead to something that had seemed impossible just days before, real peace between their peoples. The cave system turned out to be much larger than anyone expected. Jiwoo's scanners had only detected the entrance, but the tunnels stretched deep into the mountain like the veins of some ancient creature. Strange crystals in the walls gave off a soft blue light, making the caves feel like an underwater world. Ambassador Hyun-ki followed War Prime Vektash deeper into the tunnel system. Both leaders carried portable lights, but the crystal glow was enough to see by. Behind them, their teams worked together to set up a more permanent camp. The cooperation between humans and Thakari had grown stronger each day. "These formations are incredible," So-min said, running her scanner over the crystal walls. "They're natural, but they seem to pulse with some kind of energy." "Probably piezoelectric," Guwu suggested. "The crystals might generate power from seismic vibrations." Krex, the Thakari warrior who had become friendly with the human team, examined the walls with interest. "On our homeworld, we have legends of crystal caves that sing in the wind. Perhaps all worlds share some common mysteries." The peace talks had resumed in the main chamber of the cave system. The natural acoustics made voices carry clearly, and the stable temperature was a relief after days of fighting the surface weather. Progress was finally being made on trade agreements and territorial boundaries, but on the seventh day, everything changed. Taeho was monitoring the weather outside when his instruments began showing alarming readings. "Ambassador, we have a problem. A massive storm system is approaching from the east. This one is bigger than anything we've seen since we arrived." Hyun-ki and Vektash joined him at the cave entrance. Through the opening, they could see dark clouds building on the horizon. Lightning flashed constantly within the storm, and the wind was already beginning to pick up. "How big?" Vektash asked. Taeho checked his readings again. "Stormfront is over 300 kilometers wide. Wind speeds are projected to reach 500 kilometers per hour. It will last for at least 3 days, maybe longer." "Our ships," So-min said quietly, "they won't survive winds that strong." Hyun-ki felt his stomach sink. The Thakari ship was already damaged from the acid rain and volcanic heat. The human ship was in better condition, but not good enough to withstand a superstorm. "We need to move both ships into the cave system," he said. "Impossible," Vektash replied. "The entrance is too narrow. Neither ship will fit." Then we need to choose which one to save," Taeho said reluctantly. The implications hit everyone at the same time. One ship could be moved to safety, but not both. Whichever vessel was left outside would be destroyed by the storm. That meant one delegation would be stranded on Kepler 442b. Permanently, Vektash turned to face Hyun-ki directly. "The choice is obvious. Your ship is smaller and easier to move. Save your vessel and your people." "No," Hyun-ki said immediately. "Your ship has more advanced life support systems. It can keep more people alive longer. Human, do not be foolish. Save your own people. War Prime, do not be stubborn. Your people's survival is just as important." Jiwoo stepped forward with her scanner. "Actually, there might be another option. According to these readings, there's a side tunnel that connects to a larger chamber about 2 kilometers into the mountain. If we could widen the passage, we might be able to get one ship deeper inside." "How much time do we have?" Hyun-ki asked. Taeho checked the approaching storm. Again. 6 hours before the worst winds hit. "That's not enough time to move a ship that distance," Vektash said. "Not unless we work together," Hyun-ki replied. What followed was the most intense 6 hours any of them had ever experienced. Both crews combined their engineering knowledge and equipment to attempt something that should have been impossible. They used cutting tools to widen the tunnel entrance, explosive charges to clear rockfalls, and anti-gravity generators to move the ships inch by inch through narrow passages. The Thakari ship was chosen because it was more heavily armored and could better survive scraping against the cave walls. Humans and Thakari worked side by side. their different strengths complementing each other perfectly. 3 hours into the operation, disaster struck. A section of tunnel ceiling collapsed, trapping Hyanki and Vektash together in a small side chamber. Tons of rock blocked the passage between them and the rest of their teams. "Can anyone hear me?" Tejo's voice came faintly through the radio. "Ambassador, are you alive?" "We're here," Hyanki replied. "Both of us, but we're completely cut off." "We're working to clear the passage," Somin's voice added. "But it's going to take time." Vektash examined their small prison with his suit. Lights. The chamber was maybe 3 meters wide and 2 meters high. Air was coming in through cracks in the rock, but they would have to be very careful with their oxygen supplies. "How long can your suit sustain you?" Vektash asked. "About 8 hours if I stay calm and don't move around much." "You?" "Approximately." "The same." They sat down on opposite sides of the small space. For the first time since the negotiations began, they were completely alone together. No advisors, no warriors, no diplomatic protocol. Just two people trapped under a mountain on a world that wanted them dead. "War Prime," Hyanki said after a few minutes of silence. "Can I ask you something? Speak. Why did you really choose this world for our negotiations? Was it just to kill us, or was there another reason?" Vektash was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less formal, more honest. "My people are dying, human ambassador." "What do you mean?" "Our homeworld is running out of resources. The wars we fight, the territories we claim, it is all because we are desperate. We need new worlds, new sources of food and minerals. But every time we try to expand, other species fight us." Hyanki listened carefully. This was the first time Vektash had spoken about the real reasons behind Thakari aggression. "The council members see us as monsters," Vektash continued. "They think we fight because we enjoy violence. But we fight because the alternative is watching our children starve." "Why didn't you tell the council this before?" "Because admitting weakness is not the Thakari way. We are taught that showing vulnerability leads to defeat and death." Hyanki thought about everything he had observed during their time on Kepler 442b. The Thakari were proud warriors, but they were also people trying to survive. "Vektash," he said, using the War Prime's name without his title for the first time. "What if I told you that humans specialize in making dead worlds livable? What if we could help you restore your homeworld instead of you having to conquer new ones? You would do this even after we have been enemies?" "That's what allies do for each other. They help solve problems together instead of fighting over resources." Vektash leaned forward. "You truly believe your people would share technology with us, help us save our world?" "I believe that two species working together can accomplish more than either could alone. Your people are strong and brave. My people are adaptable and inventive. Together we could probably terraform a dozen worlds." They spent the next 4 hours planning. Not just a peace treaty, but a real partnership. Vektash shared information about the Kari agricultural needs and mineral shortages. Hyanki explained human terraforming techniques and resource management systems. When their teams finally broke through the rock barrier, they found the two leaders sitting together, working on a tablet that contained the framework for a revolutionary alliance. "Are you both all right?" Somin asked, helping Hyanki to his feet. "Better than all right," Hyanki replied. "We just figured out how to end this war permanently." Outside, the superstorm was raging across the surface of Kepler 442b, but deep in the mountain, two species had discovered that their greatest strength lay not in fighting each other, but in facing the universe's challenges together, the Thakari. Ship was safely secured in the deep chamber. Both crews had survived, and the peace talks had just taken a turn that would change galactic politics forever. The storm raged for 3 days above the cave system while both delegations waited in the crystal-lit tunnels. Ambassador Hyanki and War Prime Vektash had shared their breakthrough conversation with their teams, and the mood in the underground camp had changed completely. Instead of two groups trying to survive separately, they had become one team working toward a common goal. So-Min and the Thakari engineer Nexus worked together to analyze soil samples from both the human and Thakari homeworlds. Their combined expertise revealed possibilities that neither species had considered before. If we combine human hydroponic techniques with Thakari mineral extraction methods, so Min explained to the group, we could restore fertility to damaged land in half the time either method would take alone. Jiwoo had been working with Krex to translate Thakari agricultural records. Their homeworld used to support twice the current population, she reported. The soil damage happened gradually over centuries. With the right approach, it's completely reversible. Taeho studied defensive technologies with the Thakari warriors. Despite their warlike reputation, the Thakari had developed remarkable protective systems. Combined with human adaptability, they could create colonies that would be safe from almost any natural disaster, but the real progress happened between Hyunki and Vektash themselves. The two leaders spent hours walking through the crystal caves, planning not just peace but a genuine partnership between their peoples. The Kepler Passage trade route, Vektash said as they examined Jiwoo's star maps. Instead of fighting over control, what if we made it a joint operation? Thakari security escorts protecting human merchant vessels, and the mining rights in the Scorpius sector, Hyunki added. Your people need those minerals, but you've been fighting the Zentarian Union for access. What if humans served as neutral mediators to arrange fair resource sharing? They were making such good progress that when the storm finally ended, neither leader wanted to return to the surface. The cave system had become a symbol of what cooperation could accomplish, but Kepler 442b had one more test for them on the morning of the fourth day. Taeho's instruments detected that the storm had caused a major rock slide. The tunnel entrance they had used to bring the Thakari ship inside was now completely blocked. How blocked? Hyunki asked. About 50 meters of solid rock, Taeho replied grimly. Our cutting tools can handle maybe 10 meters before the power cells run out. Vektash examined the barrier with his own equipment. Thakari demolition charges could clear 15 meters, perhaps 20. But that still leaves us short. So Min checked her geological scanners. There's no other way out large enough for the ship. We're trapped. The irony was bitter. They had successfully saved the Thakari vessel from the storm, only to trap it permanently underground. Without the ship's more advanced systems, both teams would eventually run out of supplies. Wait, Guru said, studying her readings more carefully. The rock slide didn't just block our tunnel. It opened up something else. There's a new passage leading deeper into the mountain. She led them to a crack in the cave wall that had been widened by the seismic activity. Her scanner showed it connected to a much larger chamber system. These tunnels go all the way through the mountain, she announced. They open up on the other side, about 5 kilometers from our original landing site. 5 kilometers through unknown caves, Taeho said doubtfully. It's a lot of distance to move a starship. The alternative is staying trapped here until we die, Vektash pointed out. Da Hyunki made the decision. We try it, but this time we do it right. Full survey first, then careful planning. What followed was the most complex engineering project any of them had ever attempted. They spent 2 days mapping the entire tunnel system, identifying obstacles and planning solutions. The cave network was like a natural highway through the mountain, but it needed extensive modification to accommodate a spacecraft. Humans and Thakari worked as a perfectly coordinated team. So Min's geological expertise helped them predict which sections were stable enough to widen. Nex's engineering knowledge let them calculate exactly how much rock to remove without causing cave-ins. Taeho's piloting skills would be crucial for navigating the tight spaces, while Krex and the other Thakari warriors provided the muscle power needed for heavy lifting. The operation took 6 days. They used every piece of equipment both ships had, plus improvised tools made from salvaged materials. Inch by inch, they carved a path through solid rock. The most dangerous moment came when they reached a narrow passage with barely enough clearance for the ship's hull. Taeho had to pilot the massive Thakari vessel through a space that left only centimeters of room on either side. Left 2 degrees, So-min called out, watching the hull clearance sensors. Now steady, easy, easy. The ship scraped against the Cave walls with a grinding sound that made everyone's teeth hurt. Sparks flew as metal met stone, but the hull held. Slowly, carefully, the vessel squeezed through the bottleneck. "Clear," Tejo announced. "We're through the worst part." The final chamber was enormous, easily large enough to hold both ships. But more importantly, it had multiple exits leading to the surface. They had found their way out. As the Thakari ship emerged into daylight for the first time in over a week, both crews cheered. They had accomplished something that would have been impossible for either species alone, but the real celebration came that evening around their campfire. Vektash stood up and addressed both teams together. "Today we have proven something important," he said in his deep voice. "Thakari and humans are stronger together than apart. We have faced the challenges of this death world and emerged victorious because we chose cooperation over conflict." Hyanki stood as well. "War Prime Vektash speaks the truth. What we have built here over these past days is more valuable than any trade agreement or territorial treaty. We have built trust." Krex raised his water container in a toast. "To the alliance between warriors and diplomats. To the partnership between strength and wisdom," Jiwu added as the evening continued. Both groups shared stories and songs from their homeworlds. The Thakari taught the humans some of their warrior chants, while the humans introduced the aliens to Earthfolk music. Cultural barriers that had existed for centuries dissolved in the light of their shared campfire. Later, as the teams prepared for sleep, Vektash approached Hyanki privately. "Human ambassador," he said formally, "I must tell you something important." "What?" "Is it War Prime? When we chose this world for our negotiations, it was indeed meant to be a test, but not the kind you think." Hyanki waited for him to continue. "In Thakari culture, there is an ancient tradition. When we meet a new species, we test them not to prove they are weak, but to discover if they are worthy of becoming true allies." Vektash paused. "Kepler 442b was not chosen to kill you. It was chosen to see if you had the strength to stand beside us." "And what is your conclusion?" Vektash's mouth showed his sharp teeth in what Hyanki now recognized as a genuine smile. "You have proven worthy beyond our highest expectations. The Thakari Empire would be honored to call humanity our brothers." As Hyanki looked around at the mixed groups of humans and Thakari working together, sharing resources and knowledge, he realized that something extraordinary had happened on this death world. They had not just negotiated a peace treaty. They had forged a friendship between species that would change the galaxy forever. The final day on Kepler 442b dawned clear and bright for the first time since their arrival. Ambassador Hyanki stood at the edge of the massive canyon where both ships now rested, ready for departure. The death world that had nearly killed them, multiple times, now seemed almost beautiful in the morning light. Strange crystal formations caught the sunlight and threw rainbow patterns across the rocky landscape. War Prime Vektash joined him at the canyon's edge. The Thakari leader moved with renewed energy after their breakthrough in the caves. His warriors, too, seemed different. The desperate aggression that had defined their species for so long had been replaced by something that looked almost like hope. "It is hard to believe we are leaving this place alive," Vektash said, his voice carrying a note of wonder. "When we first landed, I expected to be conducting funeral rites by now. Instead, we're conducting wedding ceremonies," Hyanki replied with a smile. "The marriage of two species into one alliance." Behind them, both teams worked together to prepare the formal treaty documents. Somin and Nexith had spent the night translating the agreements into both languages and making sure every detail was correct. The treaty was unlike anything in galactic history. Jiwu activated the recording equipment as both leaders took their places at a table, made from polished Kepler 442b crystal. The ceremony was being broadcast directly to the Galactic Council, where thousands of ambassadors waited to witness what many thought would be impossible. "Today," Hyanki began, speaking to the camera, "on a world that was meant to divide us, the human delegation and the Thakari Empire have instead found unity." Vektash stepped forward, carrying a curved blade with intricate engravings along its edge. According to Thakari tradition, when warriors prove themselves worthy, they are given a blade of honor. He presented the weapon to Hyenki with great ceremony. This blade has been carried by war primes for 3 centuries. I give it to you as a symbol that humanity has earned the eternal respect of the Thakari people. Hyenki accepted the blade with both hands, understanding the massive significance of the gesture. In return, he presented Vektash with a small container holding soil from earth. This earth contains seeds from an oak tree, he explained. On my world, the oak is a symbol of strength that endures through any storm. I give this to you with the hope that our alliance will grow as strong and deep-rooted as the greatest trees. Vektash accepted the gift with equal ceremony. Then both leaders signed the treaty documents. Using traditional implements from their respective cultures, the terms of the agreement exceeded even Hyenki's most optimistic hopes. The Thakari Empire agreed to end all hostile actions against Council member species immediately. In return, humanity would provide agricultural and terraforming technology to help restore the Thakari homeworld. Joint human-Thakari colonies would be established in neutral space, with shared resources and combined defensive forces. Most importantly, both species would serve as mediators for other conflicts throughout the galaxy. The cooperation they had developed on Kepler 442b would become a model for peaceful expansion and resource sharing. The Kepler passage trade routes will be jointly administered, Vektash announced to the camera. Thakari security forces will protect all merchant vessels, regardless of species. In return, all worlds will have equal access to these vital trade connections. The mining rights in disputed territories will be shared based on need rather than military strength, Hyenki added. We have proven that cooperation produces better results than conquest. As the formal ceremony concluded, Teho began final preparations for departure. Both ships had been fully repaired using combined human and Thakari technology. The vessels were now actually stronger than when they had arrived. Flight path is clear, he reported. Weather systems are calm. We should have an easy trip back to Council space. But before they could leave, Jiwoo made one final discovery. Her geological surveys had revealed something extraordinary in the cave system where they had sheltered. Ambassador Warprime, you need to see this. She called from her scanner station. She led them back into the crystal caves where they had spent so many crucial days. Deep in the tunnels, she had found a chamber filled with ancient murals. The walls were covered with pictures that told a story. This civilization lived here thousands of years ago, Wuwu explained, translating the symbols with her linguistic software. They were advanced, peaceful, and prosperous. But they destroyed themselves through constant warfare between different city-states. The murals showed a progression from cooperation to competition to open conflict. The final images depicted empty cities and dead lands. They left this as a warning, she continued, a message for anyone who might come after them. The inscription here says, "When unity becomes division, even paradise becomes a grave." Vektash studied the ancient warnings carefully. They chose war over peace and lost everything. But we chose differently, Hyenki said. We found a better path. Before leaving the cave system forever, both leaders made a joint decision. They established a permanent research station in the crystal chambers, staffed by both human and Thakari scientists. The station would serve 2 purposes: to study the remains of the ancient civilization and to serve as a neutral meeting ground for future difficult negotiations. Other species will come here when they face impossible diplomatic challenges. Vektash declared, "They will learn what we learned, that survival depends on cooperation, not conquest." As both ships lifted off from Kepler 442b, the surface fell away beneath them. The death world that had tested them so severely now looked small and distant. But the lessons they had learned there would echo across the galaxy for generations. The journey back to Council space took 3 days. During the trip, human and Thakari crew members continued working together, sharing knowledge and building friendships that would last lifetimes. Krex had become fascinated with human music and was learning to play Jiwoo's guitar. Somin was teaching Nexus the basics of hydroponics farming. Most importantly, Hyanki and Vektash spent hours planning the details of their alliance. They discussed joint military exercises, shared research projects, and cultural exchange programs. What had begun as a desperate peace negotiation had become the foundation for a new era of galactic cooperation. When they finally arrived at the Galactic Council Station, thousands of beings waited to greet them. The docking bays were filled with representatives from dozens of species, all eager to learn how the impossible had been accomplished. Counselor Zilfik was the first to meet them as they disembarked. His forearms gestured in amazement as he looked at the mixed group of humans and Thakari walking together like old friends. "I confess," he said to Hyanki, "when you left for Kepler 442b, I expected to be planning memorial services. Instead, I find myself planning celebration ceremonies." "The real celebration will come when other species follow our example," Hyanki replied. "Peace is always possible when people choose cooperation over conflict." The news of the successful negotiations spread throughout council space within hours. Species that had been enemies for centuries began requesting human and Thakari mediation for their own disputes. The model developed on the Death World became a template for resolving conflicts across the galaxy. 6 months later, Hyanki stood in the same council chamber where he had first accepted the impossible mission. But now, instead of worried conversations about war, the hall buzzed with excited discussions about joint projects and shared ventures. So Min approached with a data tablet showing the latest reports. "The Thakari Homeworld Restoration Project is ahead of schedule," she announced. "Crop yields are up 40%, and the soil regeneration is exceeding all projections." "And the joint colonies?" Hyanki asked. 3 new settlements are already operational, with 5 more in planning stages. The combined human-Thakari defensive forces have prevented 2 potential conflicts just by being present. Through the chambers, crystal walls, Hyanki could see ships from dozens of different species docking peacefully at the station. The galaxy had not become perfect, but it had become more hopeful. Vektash's voice came through his communicator. The War Prime was back on the Thakari homeworld, overseeing the restoration efforts, but they maintained daily contact. "Human ambassador," Vektash said warmly, "I have news that will interest you. The oak tree you gave me has sprouted. It grows in the center of our capital city where everyone can see it." "That's wonderful," Hyanki replied. "How do your people react to it?" "They call it the peace tree. Children gather around it to hear stories about the humans who prove that strength and wisdom are not opposites, but partners." As the communication ended, Hyanki reflected on everything that had changed since that first day when he had accepted the mission to Kepler 442b. The galaxy had not just avoided a war, it had discovered a new way of resolving conflicts that honored the best qualities of all species. The Death World that was meant to kill them had instead given birth to the most successful peace in galactic history. And somewhere in the crystal caves of Kepler 442b, the research station continued its work, ready to help the next species that needed to learn the same vital lesson. Sometimes the most impossible challenges lead to the most extraordinary victories, and sometimes proving everyone wrong.